All right, so I'm gonna open up this Rhino file that's called clipping plane, and I'm gonna very quickly explain what a clipping plane is or what a clipping plane does. I'm gonna come over here to my layers. I see that I have this object in this layer, and I have just a regular layer. I just named it clipping plane, but I made it orange. There's a specific reason why I want to make this orange. So I'm going to type in the word clipping plane, hit enter. And for now, I'm just going to make a rectangle. It doesn't matter the size. And I can see that because it's orange, because my layer is orange, it made my clipping plane orange. And what it should hopefully be doing is slicing through your model in some way. And because it's orange, there's a pretty good contrast between the orange and the gray, so I can see this a little bit better. In order to move this clipping plane around a little bit easier, I want to make sure I have my gumball down here turned on. So when you select it, you see these little like arrows and these little arcs. So for now, for example, if you take the blue arrow and just click it and drag it and move this thing up and down, essentially what the clipping plane is doing is it's slicing through this design, or slicing through this object. I can also take the clipping plane, and if I do a single click, for example, if I zoom in and get the right angle, I do a single click on the green arc. I can just type in 90, enter, and now I can slice through this object in a different orientation. So I'm going to go back and click on this green arc, do a single click, and do -90 just to get it back to where it was. And as you can see, the size of the clipping plane really does not matter. Like, the clipping plane is not covering this area, but it's still clipping through it. I don't even have to have the clipping plane on the object. I can have my clipping plane out here, and it'll still slice through the object. So the one thing to remember about your clipping plane is the clipping plane slices throughout your entire anything and everything you have on your screen. So your entire file, it'll slice through it. So it doesn't matter how large or small your clipping plane is. It doesn't matter where it's located. It will slice through everything that's in your file. You don't have a lot of options for the clipping plane, but you do have a few. So for example, if you have your clipping plane selected, you come over here to properties, clip on clipping plane. You can flip the direction. So now you see it clipping from the bottom. Or if you go to your 4 views, by default, it's not working in the top view or in your side views. Let me go and put this in shaded mode. Unless it's not going to work in my other views unless I turn it on. So I turn on my top view, and now it's working in my top view. Or I can turn it on the front view and the back view, and I can now start to see it working in these views. But by default, it only works in the view that you make it in, because we made it in perspective mode. By default, it's only working there, but you can just turn on the other views as needed. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the view in my top view, just so I can see this a little bit better. I'm going to slightly move through this thing, and I'm going to double click over here. I'm going to make a 2D drawing. And I'm going to select the clipping plane as well as the object. Hit enter. I'm going to make sure I do it through the view. I just want like a top view of this. I'm going to do maintain source layers. And the one thing that I do want to select, I want to make sure that I select, is the clipping plane intersections. You can select other options if you want to try other options, but for sure you want to make sure you have the clipping plane intersections turned on, so when you hit OK, what should happen in your layers, you should have a list of layers. And I'm going to move this over here just to get a little bit closer. Move it off here to the side. So it made the same 2D drawing, but now I'm using my clipping plane. So now it's actually using the clipping plane to make this 2D drawing. But I'll notice that over here I have these curves and I have the clipping plane. So what it's doing is all these orange lines that I see here, it will put these lines on a separate layer. And all the lines that are below it, all the lines that are in here, all the lines that are below it, it'll put those in a separate layer. So I can start to adjust the line weights individually, right, based on what it's actually cutting through and everything else. So that's the clipping plane. It's pretty useful to get to work, especially when you're working on your designs.